It never used to be the case, but nowadays one of the most popular narratives or stories we can tell about ourselves is that of victimhood. And I can understand why. I have been the victim of abuse. I'm also a moderator in a group of over 5,000 men who have been victims of narcissistic abuse. For a long time, many of us felt like we had no voice. We felt hopeless, we felt unseen, we felt isolated, and like no one understood what our life experience was like. Then we found a community of people who tell us something that we didn't really hear before. It's okay to be you. What happened is not your fault. We understand. You are not alone. And it feels like new life has been breathed into us. Where previously we felt like we were living in shadows, we now feel seen. We're finally in the light and we're shining. And this is a good and right and necessary step in the road to recovery, because we need this step out of the darkness in order to start to become free. It gives us comfort, it gives us community and a new way of understanding ourselves and our story. And it's no wonder why we enjoy such an emotional high, and it's quite natural to become addicted to this new feeling. But it's a step on the journey and not the whole thing. It's not a place that we can stay, because while those of us who were victims of abuse need that stage to start to become free, it can also trap us if we stay there. If we focus too much on our past, we prevent ourselves from moving successfully into the future. Now, we have to process our pasts and what happened to us, and that may take some time, and it definitely takes deep work and commitment to therapy. But we cannot let what happened define us. Because if we make our pains and our sufferings into our identity, it can become very hard to let go of it. Furthermore, those of us who experienced abuse in adult relationships, which we consented to, if we only focus on what the other person did, and we don't move on to the question of what was it within me that made me attracted to that? What was it within me that made me tolerate or even become addicted to toxicity? Then we can never really heal. And I think the worst side of this is that abusers all have some sort of narrative in which they are the victim and therefore how they treat others is forgivable. On a political scale, you see this today in the narrative of Vladimir Putin. He sees himself and the Russian state as one and the same, poor victims of the West and somehow of this much smaller state, Ukraine. And therefore, in his mind, in his story, in his morality, all kinds of cruelty and war crimes are justified. Because how could he possibly be the bad guy if he is the victim? And those of us who have dealt with narcissists have seen the same thing. My dad, while he would be raging and bullying the family, would shout about how he lost his father when he was a child. So we should be grateful because we're better off than he was. Whatever abusers do is justified in their minds because they are the primary victim in their story. And those of us who have spent a lot of time around such people need to be very careful and very aware that such traits can transfer from abuser to victim, because we had so much exposure to that model and seeing ourselves as part of that world. So we really need to be insightful and self-aware. We have to move from victim to survivor to someone who's thriving, someone who has healthy boundaries, healthy self-worth and self-respect, so that we no longer fear abusers because we are incompatible with them. Victimhood sells because the brain's amygdala is always looking for something to fear. Victimhood sells because it's easier to blame and focus on parts of our life story that we couldn't control rather than on those things that we can control. And victimhood sells because we are emotional creatures more than we are rational. But victimhood will never bring us true healing. So I'd encourage all of you, take control of your life. What happened to you is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to heal. No one else can do it. So please, love yourself as you move forward in that journey. Thank you very much for listening.